evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Open Door. And you might have realised that we're a bit different to last week because he's back. Ian's back. Hey! But no one missed you, Ian. No one missed you at all last week.
I missed you guys. I did listen to the show, and it was fantastic without me.
Of course it was. Anyway, guys, look, welcome to the Open Door Show from Property CEO. My name is Richie Clapson, and as I say, perhaps those that don't know, though, I'm here with the other half of Property CEO, Mr. Ian Child.
Good evening to you all.
Ah, look at that. He's nice. He smiles and everything. Look, guys, great to have you here. And just in case this is your first time and looking at the list, there's definitely a few names I don't know. So I'm sure of you, this is the first time. What have you let yourself in for this evening? That's what you need to know. Well, our aim is to give you about 45 minutes of non-stop positivity this evening, all based around the theme of business and property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. So Richie and I run a company called propertyCEO, and basically our day job is training people how to become successful small-scale property developers. Of course, many people quite like the idea of developing property, but they often worry it's going to be quite risky, very complicated. So our job is to give them the support and the training that they need to do it as safely and as successfully, of course, as possible. We also know that there's an amazing opportunity lying just around the corner right now, with the recession and so on the horizon. That's going to create a lot of opportunity for developers. So we wanted people to help people find out all about the opportunities that are out there and to see if development would be a good fit for them.
That's right. And of course, we're following off from the global pandemic, or are we still in it? We don't know. It's all kicking off, isn't it, around this country? But look, positivity. This is what this is about. We're not belittling what's going on, but this is a positive zone. And of course, we're in a recession, but let's be positive about that because there's always good things as well. So, but those opportunities out there are only for those that seek them out at the start, rather than hanging around, waiting for everyone else to do something and waiting for it to settle down. So the opportunities, guys, are out there if you're interested. So we'll be serving up advice, predictions, definitely this evening, definitely some advice and predictions. Occasionally guests, not this evening. We thought, we've got to have a show with just myself and Ian, because, we've missed him, haven't we? We really did miss him. Obviously, and but we will have guests coming up in the future. And I guess it's a form of training to some extent, so some of you will pick up a few golden nuggets, which is good. But above all, we're going to have a bit of fun doing it. So this is 45 minutes of a bit of fun. Now, we are keen to take questions. It is a question show, and of course, if you don't got any questions, we don't have any show. So please put your questions in the chat box and we will pick them up as we go through. We are going to open the show with a little bit of a chat in a minute about certain things that's going on. And so that gives you time to put some questions in the chat box. But who's on this evening? Let's have a look. Someone else. They're all logging on. The screen's going up and down here like crazy. Okay. Well, Yvonne's literally just logged on. VJ's on. Christine Ann's on. Jacqueline's on. Jane's on. Yoko, Roma, Adi, Gavin, Deb, Sue, Clive. Marilise, I think that is, Rob, Julian, Jasvinder. Actually, I think I recognize some of those names. I think Marilise, Julian, Jasvinder, I think you guys have been on a call with Dan this week, and I think Jane has as well. Jane's on as well this evening. Who else is on? Giovanni, Dan, Josh, Karen, Mike, Gabriella's on. Good evening, Gabriella, Helen, Jackie, Thomas. Looks like a Thomas. That looks like a Polish Thomas. So if you're a Polish Thomas, it looks like you are on this evening. Amelia, Adam, Debbie, Adir, Peter, etc. Raj has just joined us. So there's a stack of you on. And there's a few little things in the chat box here. Hello, Richie. Welcome back, Ian. We missed you a lot, Yoko says.
Oh, thank you, Yoko.
Yeah, you don't get you anywhere, Yoko, that won't. Good evening, chaps, says Gavin. Good evening, Gavin. Very formal, very polite. And Deb says, eating from a wet south coast. I'm eating a nice ice cream and anticipating a great evening as always. You don't want to eat that ice cream, Debs. That's no good for your waistline, young ladies. You need to eat something a bit more healthy, a bit of a salad. And Jacqueline said, how was the fishing? Catch any big ones, Ian? Catch any fish?
I did, actually, which I have to say makes a bit of a change. So I think I'm getting better. Next year, it'd be incredible. But it was very good fun. But I did miss Open Door, I have to say.
Well, we did miss you. Jennifer's just logged on. Hello, Jennifer. Spotted you literally coming straight on. Some of our students are on this evening, which is great. Rob's on, Sue's on, so welcome. I'm not going to mention you all, so don't get upset if I don't mention you, but some of our students are on, which is great. a lot of new people that's talking to us about getting into development. So yeah, once you're here, you're all part of our family of CEOs. So hopefully you're going to enjoy this evening. What are we going to be talking about? What are we going to kick off with before you start putting some questions in the chat box? Well, what we want to talk about is the truth. Okay, this show as building a bit of a reputation right from the outset when we started what was called the support sessions, for giving you just straightforward advice. No BS, no agenda. We just love doing this. This is great fun. This is a good evening for us. And if they put something decent on the telly, we won't be here. But at the moment, there's nothing on the telly. So we love being here and love just giving you straightforward advice with no hidden agendas, no BS, no fluff. Just tell you how it is. So we thought we'd give you the truth this evening about what's really happening. What is really happening in today's property development market? Okay. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, I do a lot of presentations, a lot of webinars. Unfortunately, not so many on the stage these days, but hopefully we're going to get back to that. We're certainly training in the room with our students, and so some are on this evening. So hopefully you're enjoying the back in the room stuff. Still people logging on, and Neil's just logged on. Welcome. So what do we mean? What's really happening? What's all this about? Well, let me tell you, I was presenting the other day, and someone said to me, yeah, but development, we want to get into development, but the market's gone crazy. Prices are going up. Prices are going up. House prices. How can we possibly get into development and this and that? And then someone else at a similar time actually said, yeah, but what about building materials? You can't get you can't get plasterboard. Oh, I know a plasterer. He can't get plasterboard. Building materials, they're so scarce. Why would I want to get into development when I can't get building materials and house prices are going up? And then people they jump on this thing, and the news is awful things, really. You watch the news, and the general press are telling you things like, oh my word, this is happening, this is all going up. But what's really happening? What's happening underneath that? What's happening? Because on one hand, you think about this: does this all match up? The government are saying we're in a recession. Officially, we probably are. They're talking about redundancies and furlough. And the other night, Greggs were closing lots of stores. We had a little tear over that one, I can tell you. The donuts are terrific. So, what's happening? That's happening, and then the house market's going silly. Well, here's the thing. Okay, this is how we would see this. Okay, and having been kicking around this industry for 40 years, you know a thing or two, and you get opinion. This is my opinion. So I'm not Savills. I'm not the government. I'm no expert. But I'm going to give you my tuppence worth for what it's worth this evening for you, as people are still logging on. It's a good show this evening. Lots of people coming on, which is great. Anthony's just logged on. Good evening, Anthony. Anyway, so what's happening? Right, well, let's take the residential market first of all. The residential market's gone a bit crazy. And as soon as lockdown was lifted, the residential market did go a bit mad. Okay, it did go a bit odd. The prices have gone up, prices are increasing. You've only got to look down your street, and prices, the boards come up and they're gone at decent prices, one would assume. Underneath that, I think if you do a bit of investigation, one thing, just as a little aside, you might find that many houses are actually going under some pretty good offers. So people are wanting to move, and they're taking some pretty good offers to do that. But houses are going fairly quickly. Now, what's the reason for that? Well, we've had this stamp duty change. This stamp duty has been abolished until March next year. Is that going to encourage some people to move? Yes, it will. Okay, it will encourage some people. It won't encourage everyone, because at the end of the day, you're only going to save about £15,000 on a £500,000 purchase. Now, if you're going to go and buy a £500,000 house, £15,000 is probably not going to make a lot of difference to you doing that, if you are concerned about other stuff that's going on in the world, or your business, or your employment, whatever. So what else is going on? Well, we have many, many months of pent-up demand, because people always have to move. In the depths of any recession, people have to move. Okay, people, they get married. I know marriages have been stopped a bit, but they want to get together. People have children still. They don't stop getting pregnant. In fact, they probably get more pregnant once you're in a lockdown position. And so, that happens. People go and have children. They've got to start expanding. People's jobs still move. Sorry, I've got something flashed up on my screen here. It's probably a shopping list for this evening my wife sent me. Let me just get rid of that. So these things are happening. I'm going to try and multitask while I'm locking that off. So
didn't see salad on there.
No salad on there. No, just donuts. So you've got these people that have always had to move. This pent-up demand has been there in the industry. So as soon as the lockdown is released, that's going to happen. People are going to go to buy those houses. So you're getting several months worth of requirements now concertinaed into a period where they've got to move. And of course, there's a stamp duty which incentivizes them. And of course, then because of COVID, what are you then getting? You're getting a whole stack of other people who are going, let's say the young teenagers, the young early 20s who are living with mum and dad still. And they're going, no more of that. I've just been locked up with mum and dad for 3 months. Blimey, O'Reilly, I've got to get out of that. They're going to buy places. They're out buying places. What about those people that are in the inner cities? Maybe they've got a box garden or no garden, and they've been locked up for 3 months in the 4 walls or the yard. What do they want? Let's go and get a garden. We are going to have a garden because we're going to get locked up again. They want to do that before perhaps winter comes and we get locked down again. And I know some of you in certain parts of the country already are. So that demand was already there. What about those people that are fairly well off? And they're going, I'm not living in the city anymore. I'm not living in Manchester. I'm not living in London. I'm getting into the country. I'm not going to be where these high spots are, where the R rate has gone up to about 3 million. No, I'm not going to do it. So those people are moving. So you get all of this pent up demand, okay? Plus the government hyping it because it's all good stuff, moving around. And of course, people losing jobs. What about those that lose their jobs or think they're going to lose their jobs? What do? Let's downsize. Let's release some capital. Let's get ourselves a bit of a war chest. So all that's happening, okay? So that pent-up demand will slow. As the furlough scheme disappears at the end of this month, lots of people will be made redundant, unfortunately, as sad as it is. Lots of people will be made redundant. And I know even some of the people that we're talking to about potential students are looking for changes in career, looking for this opportunity to get into development. And we've spoken to a number of people on that. So they know that it's coming or it's already happened. And that's sad, but you've got to look at the positives. So all of that movement is going on. The redundancies will kick in, okay? The job market is going to be very different. So there will be a slowing up of that. People will stop moving. The residential market, in my opinion, will slow as we get towards the end of this year, because it always slows anyway at Christmas and January, but it's going to slow. Now, what's then happening in terms of building materials? Let's just talk about building materials as part of that. No, I tell you what, let's talk about commercial property. Let's go on about this. I know this is a bit of a rant, but hopefully this is useful. Give me a wave if you think this is useful and this is helpful. Give us a wave. Oh, I didn't think anyone was going to wave then. Good. And what we do, I just ramble on. I'll get in a minute to put a few stats and bits and pieces of what the market's saying to back up the opinion that I'm giving you.
That's good. Otherwise, I'd have stayed fishing.
But no, I think this is good stuff for you guys. Okay, so commercial market. The commercial market is not doing the same as the residential market. It is not heating up. It's going the opposite direction, or it will be very, very soon, because those companies that are closing down, those companies that don't want the big offices, that are putting people into smaller offices, those retail units that can't survive, the restaurants, the shops, all those places that are not surviving are going to shed premises or downsize premises. There already is, and some of our students are already noticing this. We had an academy day, but our academy days is when we do whole days with our students together in the room. And they're already saying they're seeing an influx of properties in certain areas come to the market, commercial properties. And what's going to happen when there's an influx of properties? The prices are going to get suppressed because there is going to be very seriously motivated sellers that their business is collapsing. They've got to get out of it. Or landlords where the business is left. They've now been left with a lease, but no one's going to rent the damn place. They want to offload some property. There are going to be very highly motivated vendors. Prices will be suppressed in the commercial market. So don't read the residential market as the same as the commercial market. That's one thing that people tend to be doing, and that's a mistake. The truth is the commercial market is going to be flooded with potential opportunities for young developers, new developers, even experienced developers out there over the coming months. Fourth quarter of this year, second quarter of next year, great opportunity to be thinking out there, purchasing property. Okay, so we've got that truth out the way. Let's talk about the truth of building materials. Everyone's saying, oh, you can't get building materials. Short-lived. It will disappear very quickly, okay? Don't worry about that. If you're thinking about getting into development right now, that is a non-issue for you. I've been there, I've been around this cycle several times before. What's happened is, yes, there's been a shortage because everything's shut down. The builders, merchants, the suppliers, the manufacturers all shut down for a period of time. They are catching up. The supply is coming back. But of course, there's that pent up demand, much the same as the residential purchasers, where everyone wants sheets of plasterboard. So that's got to be picked up quickly. They're making it as quick as they can. And all that demand that was several months where we didn't build has got to be picked back up. But what will happen is they will catch back up. Those manufacturers will catch back up. And ultimately, the building industry will slow down. Because if the residential market slows down, the big house builders will not be pumping out. You know, the Persimmons, the Barratts will not be pumping out the estates as quick as they have been. They will pull back. They will slow down. There's no point building properties that people won't buy. So the big house builders, the big commercial builders, developers will slow down in their development as we get into later this year and early next year. They will find points where they will stop. Go down your big local Persimmon, Barratts, whatever estate you've got, Bellway Homes near you, and you'll see a slowing down of the building process on those sites, almost certainly as we come forward over the coming months. That means the demand for materials is going to get less. And in fact, this industry is very flexible. And if there is a shortage of one material, they find something else to substitute it. Okay, so building material shortage will not be an issue overall, in my opinion. Okay, in my opinion. Coupled with, well, if the builders haven't got much work, they're all going to be chasing the work, those that survive. Okay, and what's that going to do to tender prices? They're going to come down. It's going to suppress tender prices. So in theory, you're going to better buy cheaper because the commercial market's dropping, and you're going to build cheaper because the tender prices are coming down. But you say, you know, you're out there and you're going, yes, Clapson, that's all very good, but there's a recession. Why do we want to develop in a recession property that is not going to sell? You just told us the residential market is cooling and it's going to head into recession, and we're going to go and build properties. Are you mad? Well, possibly so. But if you're going to build, and you're going to build, and the people that know that work with us, or some of you guys that have spoken to us, so Mary Lee's out there, you know, I think who else was on it, Julian, Jane, etc. You guys, you've been speaking to Dan this week. You've been speaking to me, some of you, I know. And you know that this is a long program. This is not get rich quick. So if you want to get into development, what you do now, if you started hypothetically right now, today, we're running out of time now because it's quite late, but you're not going to put a project into the market for 24 months. By the time you get trained and educated and find the bill and tender it and process it and build it and then go to sell it, you're going to go into the market in 2022. And everyone predicts, and Ian's going to give you a few bits of comments on this in a minute, because I'm going to let him say a few things once I've had my rant. Everyone is suggesting, and in my strong opinion as well, this recession is very different to 2008. The money is out there. It's not caused by the money. There's more money out there than there ever has been. Yes, there's going to be massive problems in all sorts of industries, but the housing shortage has not gone away. The housing requirement is there. The recession will stir this all up, and still there will be a requirement. Building the need market, not the want market. I can't talk any more about that tonight, because otherwise I'll be here till 8:30 just chatting. But talk about that in another session if you want. But if you're building something which takes 24 months from now to putting it to the market, 2022 is when the prediction is when everything will recover back to today's standards. So just think about it. The residential market's hotting up, that will die off. That's the truth, in my opinion. Okay, the commercial market is not hotting up. It will be getting surplus stock, and there'll be motivated vendors for sure. You can buy cheaper. Building materials, red herring. Don't overthink that. You're more likely to get building materials cheaper. And by the time you build it out, you put it into the market 2022, you bought it cheaper, you built it cheaper, you end up making more money than you might have done 2 years ago. That's my little rant. Ian, you've got a bit more detail to put around that?
I have. That was an interesting 5 minutes, wasn't it? We did actually, there was a flurry of activity in the chat box as soon as you mentioned Greg's. In particular, Deb's, with a word of warning for you, watch the waistline, Richie, donuts not good for you. And this I think is from the same Debs who said that she's eating a nice ice cream. So it's clearly it's all kicking off out there. So housing market, yeah, been quite an interesting period, and it's certainly fair to say that things are looking a little bit rosier than I think a lot of forecasters were predicting. In terms of the things that are moving well at the moment, houses over £1 million seem to be selling quicker than this time last year, on average about 18 days, which is actually the fastest pace that they've sold at since 2014. A lot of people seem to be kind of taking the view they want to swap those city apartments for bigger homes, you know, more living space and gardens. And I think it's also fair to say that the people that are doing that now at the wealthier end of the market who can afford to do it. We're likely to see, as COVID continues and potentially we have more issues with lockdowns and stuff, that as time progresses, we'll see more people move into that, go into that space where they're looking for bigger homes and more space. We had 1 in 8 properties sold for over the asking price in August, which is the best result that the market's had since 2015. And prices were up 5% in September, residential house prices, compared with a year ago. So we've got this sort of post-lockdown demand continuing. There is, of course, as Richie mentioned, the stamp duty holiday. So no tax on the first $500,000 of all property sales in England and Northern Ireland until the end of March next year. So that's the net effect of that is basically bringing purchases forward. Ultimately, even if the government decided to extend that or to have some further impact on reduction in stamp duty going forward beyond that, I'm not sure it's going to have too much of an impact, simply because it's people taking advantage and moving now rather than later, and ultimately those people, that head of steam runs out. So certainly true that house price is not going to continue indefinitely. I think another thing that's quite interesting, becoming tougher for first-time buyers going into the market. Basically, mortgage requirements are stiffening. Fewer lenders looking to give kind of 90% mortgages, and of course also that end of the market is potentially, it's got less assets, less capital, less equity, less able, or perhaps maybe more likely to be affected by some of the recession and the furlough ending and so on. So we're likely to see the market shift a little in the short term towards movers rather than first-time buyers. And interestingly, Savills, who I think we reported on a few months ago, they give a regular report on the market. They've actually kind of been quite bullish. They've been taken aback a little by the way the property market has reacted over the last few months. They're predicting next year that the first half is going to see a small rise. They think that there's still likely to be some upward movement in the market in the first half of next year. Then they feel that there's going to be a small decline in the second half of next year, with property prices bouncing back in 2022, which is, as Richie said, is, if you're from a development perspective, good news, because that's, if you start your journey now, that's when you're likely to be putting units into the market. I think the other thing that I'd say, the general sentiment is that we're not going to see a crash like we did in 2008. Perception is that in 2008, or immediately prior to 2008, there was the market was a little reckless in terms from a buying perspective in 2006, 2007. So that hasn't happened this time. So commentators are thinking that we're not going to see that type of adjustment. And I think the sentiment is pretty uniform in terms of the way in which the market's going to move from here on in. I think it's ever, nobody's got the kind of the ability to forecast this with any massive degree of accuracy. They've all been caught a little bit out by what's happened over the last few months. Certainly seeing it being a bit more bullish than they anticipated. But I think a lot of their forecasts have been based on some of the underlying economic conditions, which point to the fact that shouldn't see a massive crash or price adjustment, but secondly, that we're likely to see a dip in 2021 and then a recovery from 2022 upwards. And in fact, the 5-year forecast from Savills has been, they've upped that quite significantly from their previous 5-year forecast a few months ago. So that's retail. So residential. There's been other kind of news, I suppose. New builds have been pretty poorly affected by COVID. So about 52% down in the second quarter versus the first half. So, but obviously, that's just an impact of COVID. we are seeing lots of measures on the construction side in terms of people using alternative materials and being quite imaginative about how they're able to basically get the developments back on track and get construction going again. And as we've mentioned before, that is a key focus of the government. I think one of the things that's quite reassuring about the construction industry and the housing market generally is that it has a lot of government support. At the end of the day, it is such an important part of the economy that the government can't afford for it to fail, or because there are so many jobs, so many people that are dependent on it, quite apart from the overarching need for housing. So I think what we're likely to see going forward is, yeah, there's definitely going to be some stresses and strains on the housing market and the construction industry, but the government is likely to put out all the stops to make sure that it stays afloat, it stays buoyant, and these houses get built. There you go, a little tour of some stats for you from the
Good stuff.
I'd
add one thing to what Ian said, and because I don't want people to listen and worry about one of the points Ian made, where he talked about mortgage availability for new house buyers. A lot of people might think, oh yeah, I'm going to build and people can't get mortgages. That availability, that problem is now, okay? And that's why lenders are very concerned. Even at the moment, commercial lending, I mean, 2 months ago, commercial lending was all really, really tricky. The money was there, but they didn't know what to lend on or what to do. By the time you put something to the market, the whole market, it's a different world. You know, you're talking 24 months, it's 18 to 24 months, it's a different world. So do not worry about people being able to purchase those properties. I think let's take a few questions. We've got quite a few questions coming in. We won't get them through them all, but we've done a slightly different style show this evening because we just thought this would be really useful, because there are a lot of people really worried about this stuff. We just want, let's cut through it. Let's tell you what we honestly think. And I just think there's Connie, interesting there's an interesting comment on here from yourself where you say, and this is difficult and this is tough, I do know this, where our development has been delayed for 2 months. Connie, I really feel for you when you've got a development on site in situations like this. Okay, we've been trying to sell out the back end of a project. That's been a bit tricky. It is difficult. It is very difficult. Stuff does get delayed and you are in the thick of it. The important thing is this is the rough with the smooth. This is what you've got to take, the ups and the downs of development. Development is by no means all success. It's not all get rich quick. You can lose money, you can make money. You want to make sure at the very least you break even. When we train students, we talk about basically mitigating risks, and it's really important. I rather hope, Connie, there that you're in a position that, okay, you might not get the profitability that you would have desired or predicted, but I rather hope that at the very least that you have got profitability or a break even. If you're looking to exit, one of my advice might be, I don't know if you're looking to sell, no idea what you're looking to do here, but maybe look at a refinance well in advance of the end of that project, to maybe refinance and hold, because the rental market will be stronger when you put those into the market than the retail market. And you go on to say, I see you put another comment, let's pick this one up. It says it's really dispiriting, especially as local authorities not on the same page as the government build mantra. It is tough, but I think one thing you could say in the local authorities' defence, not that I like to defend the local authorities that often, but they are underfunded. They are massively underfunded. They are struggling. There is a severe lack of planning officers in place who are trying to do what they can. The government, to our benefit, has heaped a whole load of additional rules and regulations and permitted development rights and white papers upon them. You know, they're struggling enough as it is, and they've got to work all this stuff out. I feel for them a bit. It is tough. Doesn't make our life any easier, and yeah, it is difficult. But yeah, we have to have some elements of control over things. But yeah, that is a tough one. Connie, hopefully that's
just adding to that, that it's worth saying that the government does recognise that and has promised to make the necessary investments and the improvements in technology to kind of streamline the planning process. It is a little antiquated. I think there is some historical mindset issues there in terms of the people that have been under the cosh in the local planning authorities. Hopefully over time, as more investment goes in, so that mindset may shift, and I'm sure the government will do its best to make sure that there are fewer logjams in terms of the stats in terms of delays for planning development and so on, and units actually physically getting built. Is not where the government wants it to be in terms of being able to hit the housing targets. So clearly they've got to do something to unlock that, but I think it's going to be a bit of a culture change that's likely to happen over a period of time.
Connie, if you're out there and you want a bit of help, reach out to us. By all means, reach out to us. Then if we can try and help you, we will. Okay, Vijay's put a question in. Let's answer Vijay's question here. And Vijay actually put, I know you emailed that in. That's great. Guys, you can always email questions in. You're more certain that they're on the list straight away. So Vijay, yours is on the list for us today. We've got to make sure we got through that. And Vijay's question is, with the new permitted development changes, does converting an industrial unit to residential still require prior approval? If so, are we still restricted to 500 square meters? Thanks, Vijay. Well, unfortunately, that has now been dead and buried. Okay, unfortunately, the permitted development rights to convert Class B1C buildings died. And do you know when did it die? Last night or midnight. Okay, so as of today, you are no longer able to use the permitted development rights to convert Class B1C light industrial buildings into residential, Vijay. Sorry to break that to you. That permitted development right is dead and buried. Okay, now not all is lost. Not all is lost. So now, so 500 square meter was the rule. Okay, that was the rule. Now, there is a new permitted development right, Vijay, that's come in, and this might be useful for other people. There are several classes that's come in, ZA, ZG, etc., whatever they are. Now, there's a rule Z8. I can't remember them all. There's so many things going on. But there is a permitted development right, I think it's Z8, which allows you to knock down certain industrial buildings up to a footprint of 1,000 square meters, Vijay. 1,000 square meters, double what you could do on B1C. And that's the footprint. Up to a footprint of 1,000 square meters, you're able to knock that building down within certain, it's got to have certain criteria, it's got to be built within certain periods, etc., and so on. And you can build, I think it's up to 18 meters, brand new residential without full planning permission. What's not to like? What's not to like about that? Well, don't take that as brilliant. I'm just going to go and buy them, knock them down and build up 18 meters and I'm going to get a great site. There are lots of restrictions on the permitted development. It's not a full planning. It is a permitted development right, but they want to make sure that you've got sufficient light in it. They want to look at the appearance of the buildings. There's lots of things the local authority can approve of. And it's a new permitted development right that's just come in. So there's going to be a bit of testing of this. There's going to be a bit of toing and froing. Now, that doesn't mean to say necessarily that you have to knock every industrial building down. There is a process. I won't go into it today, but those that would have listened to Colin Smith comes onto the show quite a bit as a guest. We were talking with, he's a planning consultant, quite a well-known planning consultant, quite creative, lovely guy, always a bit of fun on the show. And Colin was talking about fallback. He's talked about that before on the show, and we've had a chat. Fallback is a process in planning where really, if you could go and knock that down and build all that thing up to 18 meters, you can potentially, this is going to be a negotiation, you can enter a discussion with the local authority and say, well, look, I can knock that industrial building down, which is 1,000 square meter footprint, build up to 18 meters high, and your brand new building. But I don't really want to do that. I'd like to just convert this industrial building, and those that know how, know how. If you don't know how, that's one thing that we do teach people, but if not, just go and buy a book. There's a great book out there. It's called Industrial Conversions by ourselves. It won't cost you a lot of money. It's just a cost price, and it might be interesting to show you how you convert industrial buildings. So what you could do, Vijay, is you could actually, with a planning consultant alongside you, enter into discussions with the planning authority and say, I don't want to knock this down and build all that, because that's ugly and it's imposing and so on and so forth, but I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to do that. Would you let me convert this industrial building like this? I want to do this. It's great for the environment because I'm not knocking it all down, digging it all up, building it all new. It's going to be quicker for the local people, the local residents in the area. It's going to be less disruption, and I'm going to build some lovely homes, and this is what I'm going to do. That is a discussion around what might be called fallback. So it has to go through planning, but you might get the nod that yes, they'll let that through. So not all is lost. That is one sort of loophole around it, Vijay. But yes, the permitted development right that was there has been lost. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. Connie says, thanks. I've written to the housing minister. Good on you, Connie. I like it. Very interesting on PD rights. Thank you. No problem at all. You're having a good evening, aren't you? Okay, next question. Gary, good evening, Gary. Gary's put a question in here. This one's for you, Ian. I'm not going to read it straight away and decide, but this one is for you.
Right. Okay, no pressure.
Don't know what it is. Gary says, oh, this is good, Ian. This is very topical. What's your views on the announcement from the government about making space standards apply to permitted development, and what does this really mean? Maybe you just want to start with people that don't know what that announcement is, when it was, etc., etc.
Yeah, so the housing minister caught us a little on the hop yesterday afternoon by announcing that basically all permitted development in the future will have to abide by space standards. So just for the benefit of those that perhaps don't know, permitted development, PD rights historically, space standards didn't apply. And if we were looking at it in the context of a one-bedroom flat, it meant that you could have a space standards would say that the minimum size of a one-bedroom flat is 37 square meters. Space standards don't apply, so in theory, permitted development, those flats could be any size you like. Now, the reality is, first of all, that anything less than 30 square meters is unmortgageable from a high street mortgage company, so it doesn't really make sense to develop at that level. But there was kind of a bit of a sweet spot between 30 and 37 meters where you were able to create some quite cost-effective units. They were cheaper than 37 square meter units and serving a part of the market. Still good quality, but smaller and cheaper, and that obviously enabled a certain part of the market population to be able to get on the housing ladder. Now, one of the challenges, as ever in so many cases, it was a case of a few rotten apples, etc. We had some developers who went out and kind of rather spoiled things by taking advantage of that and creating some really horrible places that weren't really fit for human habitation. And of course, the government has now closed that particular option. So now everything is going to have to adhere to space standards, where it is permitted development, and that applies to any type of permitted development. Now, as ever with government announcements, I'd say the devil is in the detail, and the detail is completely missing. So we got in touch with, we've got a contact at the government's planning policy team, touched base with them today. They were kind of playing their cards pretty close to their chest, just told me that they would, that I should expect a further announcement in due course. The questions that are kind of, I guess, on everybody's lips when it comes to this thing is, when does it come into effect? What happens to PD applications that are currently in flight and are being assessed? Will the planning authorities, the local planning authorities, have the ability to set lower thresholds locally, or will 37 in the case of one-bedroom flats be the absolute minimum? And also, will we be able to build those smaller units but require planning permission, or is the government deeming it to be that is a minimum? So I think it certainly creates it levels the playing field somewhat. I think we're still likely to be able to see a market for those types of properties, but we're going to have to wait and see, when the detail comes in. Yeah, an interesting change. But that's basically that was announced, kind of yesterday afternoon, and I think if we look at what's driven it, been a lot of negative kind of publicity and a lot of criticism from the opposition of the government in terms of these kind of rogue developers that have basically created substandard housing. If I'm honest, I think it is, as ever, it's the light is shining on a relatively small number of cases, but nonetheless, they are pretty appalling examples of people just taking advantage of things that were actually there to provide an advantage to people that were doing it properly, but there we go. The government has seen this as a great opportunity of kind of kicking that argument entirely into the long grass, getting a load of positive kind of sort of sound bites from various commentators in the industry saying that that's great that the government's listened and so on. So yeah, from a PD perspective, I think we're going to have to wait for the detail, but I'm expecting that to come fairly shortly, not least of all because there are obviously lots of PD applications in progress at the moment.
Good stuff. Hopefully, Gary, that's answered your question. And I think something I'd say as well, it's a level playing field for us all out there. So don't overthink this. Don't think, oh my word, PD doesn't work anymore. It does work. It's a level playing field. It's much more about sweating the asset and knowing what to do with schemes. That's really important. Simon's just joined us. 5 minutes to go to the end of the show, and Simon's joined us. Simon, you're going to have to watch the replay, my friend. You've missed a fantastic show. It was brilliant.
Perhaps he only likes the end.
Maybe so, maybe so. By the way, just as a message for anyone, and I know there's some new people on this evening, if you ever want to watch the replays, they're all out there on YouTube. Pop onto Property CEO on the YouTube channel. All our past shows are there. So if you are new to us, go back. There's a whole load of really useful information. If you like the style of what we do, you're going to have quite a few hours of entertainment to sit and watch there. Okay. If you don't, well, then you still can sit and watch. It's entirely up to you. Okay. Simon just said, he said, I always read the end of the book first. Doesn't everyone? Very good. I like that. Good sense of humour. Simon's one of our students, so we'll have a pop at him when we see him next about not coming on for the beginning. Okay. Yoko says, what does Yoko say? Yoko's got a question here. She said, what would you say we as a small developer could focus on, which industries our potential tenants are? Where retails, banks, etc. are struggling and offices are downsizing, not the conversion, but keeper premises are commercial. Not quite sure what your question is, Yoko. If your question is, let's try and answer this as twofold. Is it, when you say not the conversion, is it what could we keep as an investment? Interesting, okay. Because what I would say, you need to be very careful about what you are investing in commercial properties, and you've got to look at the demographics. You have to, amongst many other entrepreneurs out there, developer entrepreneurs, is predict where the market's going to go. You're quite likely to find what people want as a product, as a building product, if you like. Offices are not as they perhaps have been. There's going to be a requirement for a slightly different mix of offices. I'm not going to go into detail on that this evening. Okay, the retail units. I've talked a lot about the great artisan business boom in this country. You might have heard me speak at events on that before. That's a new type of retail requirement. Okay, so what you may now have available now is perhaps not what tenants might want in the future. So I think you may have to be thinking about conversions, but you may have a look at smaller units. More flexible units is really the key. If you are thinking about conversions, look at the stock that's coming on the market. Look at the banks, the offices, all those things, and we've got different revised planning permissions and use classes that all come together, which make things a lot easier for us to go and do stuff. But the high street is a really big focus of an area that could be interesting. Hopefully, Yoko, that gives you a bit of an answer there. Ian, what have we got next? Let's see if we can get just.
Well, I was just going to add something to that, because one of the things that's been talked about quite recently is a big increase in the uptake of what they call flexi workspace. Yeah. So this is the kind of the areas where you rather than a commercial enterprise taking on a whole building, it's basically a building that's divided up into more flexible working units. And of course, a lot of landlords are now looking at that to mitigate their whole strategies going forward. As you can imagine, if you're used to owning a big office block, and you rent it out to, I don't know, a high street bank, all of a sudden the call centers, they're downsizing, and now there's no market for that big property. What they're looking to do is see, can they create flexi workspace from that? And I think that's an area where there's going to be a significant change. There's lots of challenges in the marketplace for some of the established providers in there. I think there's a great space there for more agile, smaller developers to go in and create niche opportunities locally, because certainly some of the bigger players are struggling with some of their historic issues that they've got in terms of the lease arrangements that they have. So I would say that's definitely one to watch. And across Europe, in fact, yeah, some cities have been reporting, that around 30% of the commercial space taken in 2020 was flexi.
Yoko clarified that she actually meant commercial, and keep it as commercial, and what sort of tenants. So hopefully, the tenants are going to have to be, they're going to be more flexible in and out, smaller occupiers, that sort of thing. That's what you're probably going to be thinking of, different, more agile businesses. Guys, we're pretty much run out of time. Let me just pick off a couple of very quick things to give you a couple of pointers. We haven't obviously had time to answer all the questions because we did a bit of an intro today, something slightly different, which hopefully was good. But Pam's asked the question: where do you think the next big opportunities are going to be for developers, the high street or where? It's not dissimilar to what I was trying to say to Yoko. What I suggest, if that's a really important question for some of you people that are thinking new, I know some of you have watched this already, but if you haven't, if you are completely new to us, pop onto our website, propertyceo.co.uk, where you register for the webinar. for tonight's show. And on there is a webinar, a live webinar called Why Now. Register for that. Have a look at that. It's about an hour long, more than what we have time for here to talk about. At the beginning of that is about, you know, where the opportunities are going to be in the marketplace, the high streets, the offices, that sort of thing. There's some other stuff on there about being a developer, but the beginning of that webinar would certainly answer that question. So for Pam, hopefully that will help you. There was one other thing I was just going to pick up on. Martin said, and I just want to give you a very quick response, Martin. Martin says, what effect do you think that COVID lockdowns will have on the market? Surely it would be difficult to do any deals or projects. Yeah, Martin, it will be difficult if you're in a lockdown, but it's not impossible. And that's what we talk about here. If you're an entrepreneur, you've got to push the boundaries. There's an amount of people in lockdown were saying, oh, I can't meet agents. Yes, you can. Look what we're doing now. We're chatting to you lot. This is how we've worked for some time. This is how we do quite a bit of training. Okay, so this exists. You can meet people. You can build relationships. Don't get put off by it. So actually, no, you definitely must go and do stuff. Connie says, yes, please. Will that webinar be emailed out? No, Connie, it's not emailed. So it's just a live webinar that's on our website. You get access to it through there. So go onto the homepage and it'll take you down. It's called Why Now. And Connie, you can click on that and it'll take you through it. And you're going to get another dose of me for about an hour. So hopefully that will ruin your evening. So don't do it tonight, Connie. Have a night off and do it tomorrow.
You can only have so much, Richie, can't you, really?
Yeah. Guys, quick hands up. We did a slightly different show this evening. We didn't have a guest on. We wanted to talk about this. What's the truth? Give us a hands up. Was that? Hey, I put the hands up. I don't know what you don't know what the question is yet. So I'm going to put all the hands down and let's ask the question. You guys are too keen. The question was going to be, was that useful this evening? Did you enjoy that? Hands all up, flying up. Brilliant. Good stuff. Well, look, as we're finishing off, guys, please email us. I mean, put in the chat box now. What else do you want us to talk about? Just tell us. If there's a subject you want us to talk about or a guest you want to bring on, we've got some really good guests lined up in the coming weeks. We have slots where we keep it's just us having a bit of banter and talking about stuff. If there's anything you want, put it in the chat box or email us. Just go onto our website. What's the best email address, Ian, for them to email in any queries of what they want us to talk about?
If you email support@propertyceo.co.uk, support@propertyceo.co.uk, and we will, if you just mark it open door and put in your questions.
Good stuff.
Or indeed, who you want to see on the show.
Yeah, who you want to see on the show, any questions, or what you want us to talk about. Okay, good stuff. Please, just as we finish off, put in the chat box. It's always nice to see in the chat box that you've enjoyed it. So any comments in the final chat box would be good. We are on weekly. Those that don't know, we used to be on 2 weekly, but that was too much for you. So we now restrict you. So, less is more for you, and you need us more, so you have to turn up. We'll be back next Thursday, Thursday the 8th of October, I believe it will be, at 7 p.m. The Why Now webinar's out there. You can follow us on Facebook. We have a closed Facebook group, so apply to join that. It's called Business Owners Creating Wealth Through Property Development. But please, by all means, come back to next week's show or watch the replays on YouTube, and we'll go from there. So yeah, Ian, anything final to say?
Just to say that, just kind of reinforce one of those last points you made, really, which is that there's lots of things changing out there at the moment, and there's lots of doom and gloom as well. And actually, that's great in a way, because what it does is it dissuades people from doing the hard work, and that then creates the opportunity for other people like you to go in and take advantage of it. So there's lots of things going on. It's a very fluid space at the moment. But as we've said all along, the kind of recessions historically, it's always the people that take action at this point as we go into recession that are the beneficiaries. There are very many people standing back, sitting on their hands, waiting for the clouds to pass. I would urge you not to be one of them.
Good stuff. On that note, let's just say goodbye. Some great comments in here. Sue said, great show tonight. Thank you. Great to see you on here, Sue. Little smiley face from Connie. Loved it. Just flew by. I guess it's your first show, Connie. I haven't seen you on it before. Jacqueline says, very useful. You answered a couple of queries currently in my mind, but they're not in your mind anymore because we've answered them. Thanks, guys, she says. A says, great shows. Thumbs up. Thumb. Great stuff. Thanks, guys. Great value, says Anthony. And Yvonne says, good info as always. See you next week, A-team. Oh, A-team. Look at that, eh? Yeah, she likes us. Good show. It's really helpful to get good information. Good informed information, says Clive. Gabriella says, brilliant. My first time on the show. Absolutely loved it. Raj says, loved. He just says loved. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. See you again, says Yoko. And Gidus says, thanks very much, gents. Have a good evening. We will. Thank you very much. Thanks for being on the show. Go and enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.